Judi Alston as our presenter. I met Judi at the SONA Festival of Immersive Storytelling at Carnegie Mellon University, and that is led by Stefan Kasper, who is here today. I'm super excited that he's joining us as well. And I was just fascinated by Judi's work. It's really, really impressive. She's the founder, CEO, and creative director of the UK-based arts charity One-to-One Development Trust, which uses film, XR, and games for social impact. And she's also the co-director of the immersive storytelling studio Dreaming Methods. She's an award-winning filmmaker and digital producer and director. She's a 30-year track record spanning analog production, digital media, and virtual storytelling. She regularly speaks at festivals and events on social impact. She champions marginalized voices, and you'll see that in her work, and the intersection between film, games, and immersive practice. And I think you'll also get a glimpse of that, of sort of the wide range of her work. She was the judge for the VR program at the Sheffield International Documentary Festival in 2025. And Judi's partner, Andy Campbell, is here with her today, too, to help out. And I will turn it over to you, Judi. Take it away.
Okay, right. Thank you, everybody. It's really lovely to be here in this space. Oh, somebody's clapping. That's lovely.
Oh, and folks, you can sit on the bleacher seats. If you point your controller at them, your teleport button at them, you can sit in the chair there. Yeah. So.
Okay. So hello, everybody, and thank you, Karen, so much for inviting me to be here, and also to helping us facilitate this session. We did some prep beforehand so we could get the presentation right, because certainly I've never presented in a virtual space like this. So this is sort of really exciting. And it's a real pleasure to be here as part of XR Women and to be speaking with people who are interested in not only what the technology can do, but in what can help us understand, what technology can do to help us understand, feel and question and change. So as Karen mentioned, I'm Judi Alston. Oops. Is that okay, Karen? Was there some sound there? No, it's okay. I'm the founder and creative director of One-to-One Development Trust, UK-based charity working across film, games and immersive media and social impact. And I'm also the co-director of Dreaming Methods, which is an immersive storytelling studio that I run with my partner and number one collaborator, Andy Campbell, where we explore more fictional, literary and experimental forms of VR. The two organisations are different, but they are closely connected. One-to-One is rooted in communities, documentary practice, lived experience, heritage and social change. And Dreaming Methods gives us a more speculative space to work within fiction, atmosphere, writing, digital worlds and psychological experiences. Both organisations offer new ideas, but the first question that we always ask at the beginning of a project is, what is the right form to tell a story? Sometimes that's a documentary film, sometimes it might be a game, or a 360 film, or a VR experience, maybe a projection, an archive, an installation, or something that can sit at the intersection of all those things. And what we hope to be doing today is I hope to show you in this space that we're in at the moment, some of the work that is fairly recent and some of the variation of those type of projects that we've recently been working on. So I started out as a documentary filmmaker in the late 1980s, working with communities whose stories were often overlooked or misrepresented. And since then, my practice has moved from analogue video through to digital media, web-based storytelling, games, VR, and now XR. With over 30 plus years of production experience, every shift in technology has offered me another way of exploring the question, how can we bring audiences closer to a story? How can we make a space for voices that are not always heard? And how can we create work that has emotional depth that's made with care and responsibility? This matters to me because I don't really think immersive media should simply be about spectacle. Spectacle definitely has its place, of course, and immersive work can be beautiful, compelling, ambitious, and technically exciting. But I guess the work I'm most interested in is not necessarily about showing off the technology. It's about using technology as a social and creative toolbox. It's a way to hold memory, a way to build trust, a way to make difficult subjects more human, and a way to connect people to place, to each other, and to experiences that perhaps otherwise they might walk away from or not be interested in. So we're going to be putting some slides up, that's it. So some worlds up around you, and as we go through this presentation, I would encourage you to maybe stay sitting, but certainly have a good look around, because the images around you are going to change in a 360 space. So as I mentioned earlier, this is my first experience of presenting in a virtual space. So it seemed a really good idea to try and fully use the tech of 360 to its advantage by bringing you into some of the story worlds that we're currently creating or have recently created. For the moving image sequences, we've reduced the resolution, hoping to address any streaming issues. But if you do have issues, the session is being recorded, as we heard earlier, so it can be watched as a playback. I'm going to share a number of projects and insights with you, and then at the end there'll be time for a Q&A, reflection or discussion. The environment that we're now in is our current project, a work in progress piece. It's called the Poppytech Exception, and it's a Dreaming Methods project, which explores the rise of nationalism in the UK. It also explores themes around identity and artificial intelligence through the third-person perspective of a child. We're pushing our boundaries with this project and creating a third-person VR piece. We're also experiencing with a localised large language model, which will give audiences much more agency on the story ending, with their choices throughout the project influencing the outcome at the end of the story. An important part of this project comes from Immersive Arts Experiment funding, which is a UK funding pot that we were extremely pleased to get, very shocked actually to get as well. And what that is allowing us to do is to have some really clear time to dedicate in the testing of what we're doing with this project, and particularly with very different demographic cohorts before we actually sort of finalise the whole production. We found out that the project had... Oops. Can anyone else hear any feedback there? No, I think it might be okay. We found out that the project had been funded actually while we were in Pittsburgh when we met Karen at the Sona Festival, Sona Immersive Storytelling Festival. And we were really buzzing about the story and the unexpected news. In the story, there's a boy called Jack, and he explores a derelict factory in a former industrial town. And while we were in Pittsburgh, Stefan, who's here today in this room, the director of Sonar, took us to visit the old atom smasher in Pittsburgh, and we found it just hugely inspiring. This strange monumental object carrying its own history of science, industry, ambition, and decay. And you can see our interpretation of it here in the landscape. Bringing an object inspired by Pittsburgh into the Poppytech has opened up an invitation for us to take the project into a more science fiction direction. And I think that random way that we encounter things in life, a place, an object, a conversation, or a journey, is often so where the real creative sparks come from. So this atom smasher from Pittsburgh is now a big inspired object in our UK landscape. And that is absolutely fine, because as storytellers, we can make whatever narratives we want to make. But for us, it reminds us personally of the brilliant conversations and the wonderful people that we met in Pittsburgh, including Stefan and Karen and other people that we met along the way. And for us, it's a way of honouring that time and place where something new was born, but we're reimagining it now in a different world. And a lot of our work contains things like this, very personal symbols, objects, memories, and things that may begin as personally significant, but become developed aesthetically and narratively and woven into a new story world. So I'd now like to just say something about the Peace Garden, which Paige mentioned to you earlier. And this is going to be one of the earlier projects I'm going to talk about. This project was one of our very first VR projects many years ago, and it was produced through our charity One-to-One Development Trust, and it was rooted in co-production, and we've got some of the pictures of participants on the walls here, virtual walls. The project worked with 3 very different groups: a Syrian women's group, older participants with sight loss, and marginalised young people. For all the participants, this was their first experience of using virtual reality. We worked with each group using Tilt Brush as a creative tool, and we invited them with the support where needed to begin drawing, shaping, and building virtual spaces from memory, imagination, and feelings. Each group created their own environment, their own garden, their own sense of what peace, safety, beauty, or reflection might look like in a virtual space. For the Syrian women, the garden became connected to memory, displacement, family, and hope. It was a place inspired by flora and fauna of Syria, but also a desire for a peaceful future for their children. For the participants with sight loss, the process opened up different questions about how we experience virtual space beyond the purely visual, through sound, scale, movement, contrast, memory, and touch-like imagination. They also wanted to celebrate the 150th year of their charity, Wakefield Sight Aid. And for the young people, it offered a way to experiment creatively and playfully with new technology. The project wasn't just about creating a safe space, though. It was also about creating a safe physical space for the sessions, which ran in community centres, libraries, and even in a pub. Before people could feel confident trying VR, making marks in 3D space, or imagining a world that felt personal to them, trust had to be really earned, and quality time was invested into sharing ideas. Cultivating the confidence and openness to have a go and not be fearful of the tech or scared of getting anything wrong was really, really important. Because co-production isn't really just about asking people what they think. It's not just about extracting stories or gathering content. It has to be about creating the right conditions where people can shape the work aesthetically, emotionally, and ethically, with their own ownership. At the end of this project, all 3 groups came together to celebrate what they'd made, and that coming together felt really important. They were very different participants with different lived experiences and different relationships to technology, and all had different reasons for being involved. But the virtual garden became a shared meeting point, a place where each group had made something of their own, but where these spaces could sit alongside each other comfortably and in harmony. And I'm really delighted, as Paige mentioned earlier, about the XR Women's Global Community Garden, that the Peace Garden is going to become a permanent installation within that museum. And again, I see that as a collaboration that's attributed solely from having come to Pittsburgh and made these connections. Paige said when she accepted the work in an email she wrote, "I absolutely love the Peace Garden and I'm thrilled that it will be part of this permanent installation within the museum. The project feels deeply aligned with the spirit of the community garden, creating space for connection, reflection and ongoing growth, and I'm excited to share it with visitors." It's 10 years on now since that project was made in a small northern city in the UK, and it has now found a new life in a global space. How absolutely fantastic is that? We could never have predicted that 10 years ago, and it just really, really moves me that this is happening. It illustrates perfectly the importance and potential of international collaboration and finding people wherever they are in the world that share the same values. And in this instance, the two projects just align perfectly. I'd like to invite you now to just have a minute being present in the space and maybe even reflecting on your own peaceful place and what that might look like. From the Peace Garden, I want to move into a very different kind of project. The Abandoned Library is a dreaming methods project, a VR experience that explores climate breakdown, displacement, memory, and artificial intelligence. And the shots that are around you are visuals from the VR piece that we actually made as artworks, individual standalone artworks. The project is set in an imagined near future on the flooded coast of East Yorkshire in northern England. The central character is called CJ. She's a young poet working as part of a cleanup crew. She moves through this strange, damaged landscape and encounters a malfunctioning AI, who's called the Librarian, who reveals fragments of how human actions and inactions have led to the world that CJ is now trying to survive in. Although this is a fictional work, it's very much rooted in real anxieties, climate change, ecological loss, displacement, and the question of what stories might survive us when the world changes. One of the things that felt really important in this project was that it was not just made as a VR experience, we also wanted to bring the work into a physical space. Midway through the production, we created an exhibition of the project and had it at the Art House in Wakefield, which is where our studio is based. And using elements of the artwork, the text, the archive material, and the visual language of the VR piece, we created a physical installation. VR can be really powerful, but it can also be exclusive. Not everybody wants to wear a headset. Not everyone feels confident with the technology. Some people need a different approach to the work to experience it more slowly or more socially or through a different route. By creating a physical installation alongside the VR, we opened up a different way into the story. People could walk around the space, look at the artwork, read fragments of text, watch projected material, and talk to us, and then choose whether or not they wanted to put the headset on or not. So the project became more than a VR piece. It became a world where people could enter in different ways. Within the project, we made opportunities for early career artists, young people outside of the traditional education system who are facing economic or cultural barriers. This is really important in a lot of our work. If we're talking about the future of immersive media, we also have to ask Who gets to help shape the narrative? And how can we create opportunities for the younger generations in this genre? The Abandoned Library gave emerging creatives the chance to work on character, motion, music, world building and atmosphere within a professional XR production. It wasn't just about skills development as an add-on, their creative paid roles became part of an emotional identity of the whole project. Alongside the exhibition, we also ran workshops with children and families. We invited children to explore a specially adapted version of the VR world, and then to write creatively about their hopes for the future and for the planet. This became one of my favourite parts of the project. The children's words were not just treated as workshop outputs or feedback. We wove them back into the experience itself, placing them as text within the virtual landscape, almost like mycelium spreading across the ground, connecting thoughts, fears, and hopes for the future. This felt really powerful. Because the virtual world was not fixed, it was being fed by the people who encountered it. Children's hopes for the environment became part of the work that part of the ground that CJ walks across. And this links back to one of the themes of this talk. How can immersive media create emotional connection without simply overwhelming people? With the Abandoned Library, we were dealing with climate breakdown, which can be frightening, especially for young people. But by including participation, we could create a space that allowed people to feel something, but also contribute to something bigger and something more creative. For me, this is where social impact of this kind of work often sits, not only in the whole ecosystem around what's supporting it. I'm going to now show you a short extract from the Abandoned Library. It's only a couple of minutes long, to give you a sense of the atmosphere and of the piece, linking in the music, spoken word and text, and showing you the motion capture and weather simulation.
Amidst the bleak, light cuts through like crystal. The sun still rises, the sun still sets. The sky gasps and holds its breath.
Okay, guys, we need to abort. Storm coming in.
The weather looks fine to me.
Do you hear me, CJ? Abort. Now.
Hey, there are books here, like everywhere. It's a library. I'm heading to the library.
CJ, what the hell?
It's fine. I'll just wait the storm out. I really want to take a look.
CJ, listen to me.
The ground slow bleeds a deep wound. A red paint pot kicked over on a plush rug. A burst open ragdoll, a red static fuzz, a lolled head like a sandbag slumped, stuffing spewed out from her mouth, vowels drowned in a sea of lost words, muddled and muddied and muffled, unheard. My foot swings back to kick her and her eyes meet mine. She's seen things I'll never see. She's from another time. A violent love rages inside. She knows. She's sorry. She wishes she was mine. She is the aftermath of an electric shock. Abandoned trash, used and tossed. She's fairground haunted house. She's upside down bumper car crash. Clank and spark, squeal and laugh. Orange to black, a fungus in my throat. The sky is a madwoman. She lashes out.
A lot of our work draws on archive film, and very often that archive comes from a film that I filmed myself over the last 40 years. It feels really important to me with archive because archive I don't think is neutral. It's not just old footage or historic content that we drop into a new format. It carries the point of view of the person who filmed it, the relationships behind it, and the politics of the moment. And I love the atmosphere of the time, and that's something I think you can relive over and over again with archive. With Revealed Triptych, we were working on archive connected to the coalfield communities that I began filming in the years after the 1984-85 miners' strike. This was the biggest industrial dispute that the UK has ever known, and it was a dispute between the government at the time, led by Margaret Thatcher, and the trade unions and coal miners. So the material has a long personal and organisational history. It links right back to the origins of One-to-One Development Trust and to the commitment to documenting working class stories from within the communities, rather than having these communities spoken for or misrepresented. In this project, the question became, how do we take archive material that was originally filmed for screen documentary use, build on that material to revise the story to new audiences and invite them to encounter it spatially, emotionally, and across different platforms? How can we take that one story of that one time and move it across XR, film, and game-based forms to reach new audiences, as it was the 40th anniversary of the miners' strike? That led us to develop Revealed Triptych, a project that became realised across 3 interrelated forms: a VR experience, which we called Revealed the Pit Camp, a cinematic projection installation called Triptych, and a mobile video game with an AR element called Rollerbird. And on the wall there are some of those sort of images from the different 3 parts of the triptych. Each project carries the same core motivation, which is to help audiences understand the significance of the miners' strike from a heritage perspective, but also conveying how the mining industry was so central to people's lives and communities. They can be exhibited together, like they were at Sona Immersive Storytelling Festival, where the project was awarded a prize for its historical storytelling. Or they can also work really well individually as standalone projects. The projection invites reflection, the VR creates a presence, and the game enables participation. One of the important figures in Triptych became Chloe the canary, who's here with us today. Historically, canaries were used in coal mines as early warning systems, sensing danger before people could see any danger themselves. In our project, Chloe began as part of the mobile game and AR experience, but she quickly became almost a totem for the whole work. Chloe carries a vulnerability of the history, but also something playful, hopeful, accessible, and future-looking. Our audiences really appreciated Chloe in a way that we could never ever have believed at the beginning of the project. She actually became a bit of a heroine of the story, and it was even suggested in Sona that we made Chloe into a plushie and tried to market her to raise some funding, which actually is not a bad idea. But she became a really good way into the story for people who might not immediately connect with mining heritage or political history. So we're pleased to have Chloe here in this 360 space with us today, which feels very fitting as she's really bringing memory, playfulness, hope and connection here with her presence. I'd like to share with you the trailer that we made for Reveal the Pit Camp, which is the VR part of the triptych, and this is just about 1 minute long.
In 1984, when the miners went on strike, my life changed forever.
A lot of women in this area and other areas got started being active in the strike.
Next thing we heard all these sirens, and then we saw the headlights coming, so we downed, got on his bellies.
A red flag waved, a horn rang out, a muffled bang delivered its clout. The centres of industry in unison fell, crumbling, sounding the final death knell.
Our communities were being destroyed, and we did what we do best. Came together in unity to fight.
But we've not lost the spirit of socialism. It's still on the agenda. My message to you is, never surrender.
So I want to move on now to another project, which is called Streets of Change. This is a VR project about rough sleeping, vulnerability and homelessness. But this project we created alongside a documentary film that was made not just about homelessness, but also about addiction. And the shots that are currently showing are from the documentary film and the really wonderful launch night that we did. The VR piece, though, took a different route to the film, but we used the film to really shape our research. The VR project creates a fictionalised street environment shaped by the researched and lived realities of the stories that people shared with us. I'm going to show you now a slightly longer extract from this piece because I don't really think it can be understood through a quick trailer. It needs a little time, so please allow about 3 or 4 minutes. The work is about atmosphere, isolation, discomfort, and emotional pressure of being in a space where you are visible and ignored, or visible and targeted. What VR can do really well is create a moment of proximity. It can ask an audience to pause, to stay with discomfort, and to consider the humanity behind an issue that is often so reduced to prejudice, policy, or statistics. So I'd like you to sit down if you can and invite you to watch this short extract of Streets of Change.
You don't realise how easy it is to become a rough sleeper, where one night of misfortune leads into another night, a week, a month, and more. I had a large, battered rucksack, carrying what was left of my previous life. I wandered the streets all day with an empty belly. The bag got heavier. I'd sit by the phone boxes watching the world go by, counting the number of pigeons that walked past. They seemed to take more notice of me than the passers-by, to whom I was invisible. I'd trade a pair of socks or a pen from my bag for a smoke or a can. There's always someone who needs something from someone, until it all runs out and there's nothing left. As the nights rolled on, the less important my bag became. The contents got wet, soaked by the rain, and by the yobs that pissed on me as they filmed it and laughed. They kicked at my bag and my head and what few things I had left, scattered, adding to the litter in the doorway. I never knew I could survive such cold nights. I was given a sleeping bag by a local charity, but even with that, my body would become numb as I watched the rain fall. I'd form words, speaking out loud, only to myself, just to see my ice-cold breath, just so that I knew I was still alive.
Dear Lord, keep me safe. Dear Lord, keep me safe.
Like a mantra, these words toss around my head night after night. Hidden in the shadows, hoping no one will look long enough to see me. Who am I? Daughter, sister, mother, lover, drug addict. Nobody. Forgotten. Invisible. Each night is a war, clawing at my mind, begging for relief, rattling the small change in my palms and rattling in my head. The streets stretch ahead like veins of stone. Their rhythm of survival plays out with beats of the night. Car horns, sirens, a hum of chat and laughter. Church bells ring. Dear Lord, keep me safe. Dear Lord, keep me safe. Let's blot out what I did for a rap in the dim lit room where the shadows dance. The needle pierces my skin. Liquid fire dissolves the noise. The street lights blur. For a moment, the playful colors bounce to their own tune. Then, I sink deeper into the concrete, wrapping the blanket of loneliness tightly around my bones. I drift into nothing. Time passes. A fox sniffs at me. Or was it a rat? Daylight is breaking. The sounds of night turn into the sounds of the day. I am still here. Still part of this noisy, relentless world.
With Streets of Change, we tried to create an encounter that's emotionally truthful while also recognising the limits and responsibilities of the medium. The project came about from spending time with service users who were happy to share insights into their homelessness stories. From many, many, many stories, we ended up writing 3 different character stories because one story could never be enough just to represent the many complex reasons that somebody might end up rough sleeping. And that mattered because homelessness is often flattened into a stereotype. People are judged and feared, ignored, pitied, or blamed. And we wanted to move away from that and create something more human, more layered, and more difficult to dismiss. The street itself was designed to feel recognisable, a little like Northampton, where the project is based in the UK, but also that had a ring to it of many towns and cities in the UK as well. Not a perfect copy of a real place, but a heightened, slightly dreamlike version of a street, familiar enough to feel real, but stylised enough to hold the emotional and poetic layers of the story. And I'm really glad that Gary is with us today. She worked on the project and did some of the 3D model design on the street. So thank you, Gary, for coming in and giving your support. We used sound, spoken word, environmental detail and fragments of text to build that atmosphere. The audience is not given a lot to do in a conventional game sense. Instead, the experience asks them to notice, to listen, and to sit with the feeling of being exposed, isolated and uncertain. And that raised really important ethical questions which we had to juggle with. How close should we bring an audience to someone else's vulnerability? How do we create empathy without turning trauma into spectacle? How do we make something powerful without making it manipulative? How do we avoid suggesting that a few minutes of VR can stand in for lived experience? Those questions sat at the centre of this project. And for me, the answer was to keep returning to care, context and humility, to be clear about the work, what the work can do and what it definitely can't do. It can't get rid of homelessness. It can't solve homelessness. It can't replicate the exact experiences of homelessness. And it can't replicate listening to people's experience in real life. But what it can do, and I think it can do really well, is it can interrupt assumptions. It can create a moment of emotional attention, and it can help audiences feel about the issue in a different way. It can also trigger becoming part of a wider conversation, especially when used alongside documentary discussion, training, outreach or campaigning. And this is where the social impact of Streets of Change really sits for me, not just inside the headset, but in how the work is used afterwards, who sees it, what conversations it's opening up, and whether it encourages people to think or act differently. So this project links very directly into the theme of the talk. Immersive media can really help engage audiences with complex and underrepresented stories in more embodied ways. But the embodiment has to be handled carefully. It has to be grounded in research of the subject matter. There's a responsibility to the story, and there's got to be a respect for the characters within it and those who also experience it. The project had a really strong life outside of the original production. It screened successfully, won some awards, travelled into the festival circuit and public screenings. But what mattered most was how it began to be used in ways that we didn't expect. At the launch night, people responded with real empathy, asking how they could then support homeless projects, how they could donate money. They wanted to volunteer or get involved and help. And then a homeless charity in Northampton and the West Northamptonshire Council decided to invest in headsets so the VR experience could continue to be used to raise awareness and support campaigning around homelessness. This felt really significant because it became an unexpected tool that organisations, voluntary groups and others could use in their own advocacy, training and public conversations. The VR can't solve homelessness, but it can interrupt assumptions and create a moment of emotional attention and help bring a more humanity into the conversation where people are often reduced to just being a problem, a statistic, or somebody that you can just walk by. So to bring together, all the parts of this talk before we get into a sort of a Q&A and a bit of a discussion, I'm playing a visual backdrop from the Revealed Triptych project. This was part of the projection piece. And it's the changing post-industrial landscapes of the area where our studio is based, which was very much a coal mining area in its day and has now had to reinvent its sort of identity. But what I hope that the projects I've shown you today show that immersive storytelling is not just about new tools or new formats. It's about the relationships we build around the work with our participants, our audiences, communities, collaborators and places. Across these projects, whether we're working with archive film, fiction, co-production, documentary research, 360 video, VR games or installation, the questions remain deeply human. How can we create spaces where people really feel seen? How do we hold difficult stories with care? How do we invite audiences closer without overwhelming them? And how do we make work that can travel beyond the headsets into conversation, reflection, and direct action? For me, XR is at its most powerful when it helps us listen differently, imagine differently, and connect across experiences that may at first seem so distant from our own. So thank you very much for listening to all that. I hope it's gone okay. And I really do appreciate spending time in this space. It feels, I was quite scared, I must admit, to coming in, but it feels like it's sort of gone all right. And I'd really welcome your questions, thoughts, and if we can have any discussion as a group about any of the themes that have been raised, that would be absolutely fantastic. I'm also super up for connecting to anybody after the session and would welcome any sort of feedback afterwards or links up on LinkedIn or potential collaborations or anything. So thank you very much, and back over to you, Karen.
Wonderful, Judi. Oh, thank you.